217 Teachings of Mañjuśrī. Teachings of Mañjuśrī, the Lion of Speech.
D.
Explaining how all virtues without exception are thoroughly established as being of the nature of precious, spontaneously actualized displays of the inner glow. On another occasion when I encountered Mañjuśrī, the Lion of Speech, in a meditative experience of clear light, I asked him, O teacher, protector of the world, although I have correctly ascertained how all appearances of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants are nothing other than my own appearances, please reveal to me whether or not the distinct names and pure realms of all the Buddhas are established as autonomously existent objects. The teacher replied, O great being, listen. The qualities of precious spontaneous actualization constitute the inner glow of the ground Dharmakaya, the Shugatagarbha. With this as the basis, the displays of the Buddhafields and the male and female deities, together with the palaces, are naturally perfect in the ground itself, and this perfection is wisdom. Presenting them as existing in other realms is skillful means. The perfection of the sublime qualities in the ground itself is ultimate, while explanations of their existing in other physical worlds with the sentient inhabitants are relative. Moreover, the spontaneous actualization of the ground itself as displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness is the definitive meaning. All explanations of the Buddhafields and the names of male and female deities and so on as entities with real characteristics existing in other realms constitute provisional meanings. On another occasion when I encountered Mañjuśrī, the Lion of Speech, in a meditative experience of clear light, I asked him, O teacher, protector of the world, although I have truly fathomed how all appearances of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants are nothing other than my own appearances, please reveal to me whether or not the distinct names and pure realms of all the Buddhas are established as autonomously existent objects. The teacher replied, O great being, listen. The sublime qualities of precious, spontaneous actualization constitute the inner glow of the ground Dharmakaya, the Shugatagarbha. With this as the basis, the displays of the Buddhafields and the male and female deities, together with the palaces, are naturally perfect in the ground itself, and this perfection is wisdom. Presenting them as existing in other realms is skillful means. The perfection of all the kayas and sublime qualities in the ground itself is ultimate, while explanations of their existing in other physical worlds with the sentient inhabitants are relative. Moreover, the spontaneous actualization of the ground Shugatagarbha as displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness is the definitive meaning. All explanations of the Buddhafields and the names of male and female deities and so on as entities with real characteristics existing in other realms constitute provisional meanings. The following are presentations of the ultimate as relative, in accordance with the ways of samsara. Here is how all the jhanas are subsumed within the five kayas, the great ultimate reality of the uncontrived, naturally present existence of all phenomena included in the world of appearances of samsara and nirvana as the ground absolute space, the great emptiness, is called Dharma. Due to the unimaginable range of dispositions and specific faculties, there is an unimaginable range of entrances to the path, experiences, and goals to be achieved. Their natural presence is called kaya. The natural perfection of the displays of the spontaneously actualized kayas and facets of primordial consciousness as enjoyments is called sambhogakaya. The displays of emanations that are none other than the ground, without any mental activity of thinking to send forth emanations, are teacher nirmanakayas, created nirmanakayas, living being nirmanakayas, and material nirmanakayas. The consciousness that grasps at the self is like a container of water, and the sublime qualities of the absolute space of the Shugatagarbha are like the planets and stars in the sky. When these occur simultaneously, emanations as dependently related events appear to be of four kinds. In reality, the physical world and its sentient inhabitants are none other than displays of the three kayas. The following are presentations of the ultimate as relative, in accordance with the ways of samsara. Generally, both samsara and nirvana arise from the creative power of precious spontaneous actualization, and this is none other than the creative power of the Shugetagava itself. All of samsara and nirvana consists of nothing other than your own apparitions. Therefore, all teachings that are presented in accordance with the ways of samsara are relative. They are skillful means for leading disciples who grasp at the permanence of the absolute space of ultimate reality, which is free of conceptual elaboration, and who are dependent upon a relative, effortful path. Thus, in terms of the delusive appearances of sentient beings, many avenues arise for accumulating merit. To take prostrations as an example, merely rising up and bending to the ground does not accumulate merit. Rather, positive thoughts of faith, reverence, and admiration involved in the intention to prostrate actually generate a heap of merit, for they are facets of the ground Shugetagava. Likewise, regarding circumambulations, virtue is not accumulated by merely lifting and placing your feet in the act of walking, or regarding offering water, by the mere act of filling bowls, or regarding verbal recitations, by the mere act of uttering words. The heartfelt, positive thoughts in all of these are facets of the ground Shugetagava, so they are the actual virtue. Similarly, for the accumulation of non-virtuous karma, for example, 1. The basis, namely the recognition of someone as a sentient being, 2. The intention, namely the arousal of the violent intention to kill, 3. The enactment, namely the performance of the deed with respect to a sentient being, and 4. The culmination, namely the termination of that being's life or taking satisfaction in such a deed, constitute non-virtue. Likewise, if you dream of accumulating merit, say, in a temple in a dream, and the next day you take satisfaction in thinking you have done so, that is virtue, and the same is true for non-virtue. Whatever good and bad thoughts arise, they are all facets of the Shugetagava, so this is the meaning of virtue and vice and of the variety of appearances of joys and sorrows. Moreover, non-Buddhists also hope for the results of their own practices, and by applying themselves to their own paths, they achieve their respective results. Thus, their own paths are facets of truth and of the Shugetagava, so it is said that you must not disparage non-Buddhists. Likewise, Bonpos have adopted teachings similar to Buddhism, and they call them the Great Elements. 96. It is said that if you are very diligent, like Balek Tokdin, you achieve the rainbow body by way of 21 bindus led by the syllable A. Thus it is said that you must not disparage Bonpos either. Similarly, all Buddhist yanas, from the Sravakayana on up, also take the Shugetagava as the path. Thus, according to people's specific temperaments, capacities, and motivations, they all achieve their own results, so the paths are all true. However, even though they all derive their own paths from the Shugetagava, none of them see the actual path itself. As an analogy, even though an unimaginable array of beings with various capacities of mouths and stomachs may all drink their own portions of the ocean, never do they gulp down the whole ocean. The generation of bodhisattva is an inconceivable method of expanding the mind for beginners, so the generation of bodhisattva is very important for them. Even 100, 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000 physical and verbal virtues cannot match it. Nevertheless, if emptiness is realized, there is no need to cultivate compassion by some other means. However, most people nowadays say that even if emptiness is realized, compassion must be cultivated by other means. This is like having fire, but saying that you must search for heat elsewhere. For a yogin who has realized emptiness, there is no distinction between the object of compassion and the agent of compassion, for such a person has ascended to the great openness that is devoid of an object. Therefore, such a yogin experiences ultimate bodhisattva. Patching the ground of being with other thoughts is tantamount to the Buddhas placing their hopes in sentient beings, so this is a very poor method. Regarding the teachings of the Buddha, none are the final word. There is an unimaginable array of provisional meanings, definitive meanings, indirect meanings, non-implied meanings, and so on. Although many scholars may write commentaries to a mere 4 lines of the Buddha's teachings, it is difficult for any of them to realize their actual meaning. Just as many sentient beings may drink from the ocean, but none can drink it all down in one gulp. Everything consists of none other than your own appearances and the apparitions of the Shugatagarbha. Mañjuśrī declared, earth is discerned as the life force, and water is discerned as the life force. Accordingly, some sentient beings regard the earth as the life force, some regard water as the life force, some regard air as the life force, others regard space as the life force, and so on. Now I, as a yogin who has accomplished the practice of taking the vital essence, sustain myself, as it were, by meditating on air, space, and so on as food. Therefore, with the intention to lead disciples who lack good fortune and who grasp at permanence on the relative, effortful path, using skillful means to guide them to the effortless absolute space of ultimate reality, all the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness of the ground Shugatagarbha are fabricated as having real characteristics. The deities, celestial palaces, and so on to be actualized are fabricated in accordance with the ways of samsara, and all teachings about a pure realm far away called Vaisali constitute paths of skillful means. In this regard, in order to guide people who cling to bloodlines, who are deluded with respect to the lineages of the 5 great bloodlines of Mutsaga, Achakru, Apadong, Sekyungra, and the 2 Paringas, who are counted as one, all the jinas are subsumed within and are displayed as the 5 kayas. Thus, all phenomena included in the world of appearances of samsara and nirvana consist of all phenomena in the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, in the great expanse of the ground, absolute space, emptiness, free of conceptual elaboration. As an analogy, just as the nature of all the reflections of planets and stars in the ocean is water, and the nature of all physical worlds and the sentient inhabitants is space, all appearances of entities are none other than the nature of the ground. Great ultimate reality, uncontrived and naturally present, is called Dharma. The natural presence of an unimaginable range of dispositions and specific faculties, entrances to the path, experiences, and goals to be achieved, which are gathered and heaped up, as it were, is called kaya. In the absolute space of the ground Shugatagarbha, all the displays of the spontaneous actualization of the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities are naturally perfect as primordial enjoyments in the great ultimate reality of the ground, and they are called sambhoga, complete enjoyment. Regarding sentient beings who are obscured by ignorance, karma, and mental afflictions, from the moment that the consciousness that grasps at the self arises, all appearances in the dream state, in the waking state, and in the hereafter, along with all sense qualities of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, are naturally perfected as enjoyments without doing anything or effortfully accomplishing anything. Moreover, once enlightenment is achieved, all displays of purity, liberation, spontaneous actualization, kayas, and facets of primordial consciousness are naturally perfected as enjoyments without doing anything or effortfully accomplishing anything, so they are called sambhoga. All qualities of wisdom and primordial consciousness are spontaneously actualized as an aggregate, as it were, so this is called kaya. Emanations from the ground Shugatagarbha do not emerge with the mental activity of thinking forth. Regarding the teacher Nirmanakars, created Nirmanakars, living being Nirmanakars, and material Nirmanakars, the consciousness that grasps at the self is like a container of water, and the qualities of the absolute space of the Shugatagarbha are like the planets and stars in the sky. When they come together, the 4 kinds of dependently related emanations appear. Teacher Nirmanakars are displays of the absolute space of the Shugatagarbha, arising like the planets and stars in the sky reflected in the lucid water vessel of your own self-grasping. Now, such Nirmanakars include the Guru, or spiritual mentor, who reveals the meaning of the primordial consciousness that is present in your own being. Likewise, this is also the case for realizations arising in dependence upon the written word. The methods and so on for realizing your own nature in dependence upon daytime appearances, nighttime appearances, meditative experiences, and so forth are the self-appearing teachers who appear to you. Living being nirmanakaras arise from your own self-grasping thoughts as objective companions, similar in form to yourself as a biped, or like other creatures with many legs or no legs, or as creatures with wings, claws, hooves, horns on their mouths, horns on their heads, and so on. All such continuous appearances as the forms of various creatures that are born, die, go, and come are called living being nirmanakaras. Created nirmanakaras include paintings and statues as representations of the bodies of enlightened beings, texts as representations of the speech of enlightened beings, and stupas and so on as representations of the minds of enlightened beings. These are emanations of your own Shugatagava arising to yourself, and they are called created nirmanakaras. Material nirmanakaras include requisites such as clothing, ornaments, and household goods, as well as an unimaginable array of luxuries that are objects for your use and that arise simply from your own appearances. Such appearing phenomena are called material nirmanakaras. These four kinds of nirmanakaras are self-appearing emanations of the Shugatagava in the objective expanse of consciousness that grasps at the self. They appear like reflections of planets and stars in water, arising as dependently related events due to the simultaneous confluence of the causes and conditions of a vessel of water and the planets and stars in the sky. Therefore, as long as the space of self-grasping by disciples remains, they arise continuously, just as reflections unpredictably and continuously appear in a lucid, clear pool of water until it dries up. In reality, the physical world and its sentient inhabitants are none other than displays of the three kayas. The aspect of its essential nature as emptiness is called Dharmakaya, the aspect of its nature as spontaneous actualization is called Sambhogakaya, and the aspect of its distinct appearances is called Nirmanakaya. Moreover, the ground itself is the essential nature of all of samsara and nirvana, and in this essential nature everything is of one taste, so it is called svabhava, and because all sublime qualities and facets of primordial consciousness are assembled in an aggregate, as it were, it is called kaya. Since the ground of being is unchanging throughout the three times and does not transform into any other essential nature, it is called immutable. Since it cannot be injured by anything else, it is called invulnerable. Since it cannot be destroyed by itself or anything else, it is indestructible. Since it is the universal basis of samsara and nirvana, it is real. Since it cannot be contaminated by good or bad qualities, it is incorruptible. Since it is devoid of movement, it is stable. Since it can penetrate even the subtlest cognitive obscurations, it is unobstructible. Since it cannot be overcome by any object or condition, it is invincible. Thus, the nature of existence of the ultimate, indestructible Vajra is imbued with four pledges. It is impossible for sentient beings to realize it, apart from those beings who possess the necessary karma and good fortune. Once it has been realized and put into practice, it is impossible for you not to acquire indwelling confidence in it. When confidence is acquired, it is impossible for you not to be liberated. As for the extent of your liberation, it is impossible for you not to become enlightened. The natural presence of these five kayas in the ground itself is ultimate, while explanations of them as being distinct constitute the relative path of skillful means. The aspect of its essential nature as emptiness is called Dharmakaya, the aspect of its nature as spontaneous actualization is called Sambhogakaya, and the aspect of the distinct appearances of all phenomena is called Nirmanakaya. Thus, from this present moment of impure appearances of samsara onward, there are no phenomena that are not included among the body, speech, and mind of all the jnans, and in the infinite expanse of purity, they are primordially awakened. How is this so? All appearances are perfect in the absolute space of the jnanas bodies, the spontaneous actualization is perfect in the absolute space of the speech, and their essential nature is perfect in the absolute space of their minds. Similarly, the desire realm is already primordially pure in the absolute space of the Nirmanakaya, the form realm is already primordially pure in the absolute space of the Sambhogakaya, and the formless realm is already primordially pure in the absolute space of the Dharmakaya. Likewise, the ground itself is the essential nature of all of samsara and nirvana, and in this essential nature everything is of one taste, so it is called svabhava. Moreover, this great self that embodies the essence of the non-conceptual primordial consciousness of ultimate reality and all the shugatas is the essential nature of the absolute space of the one taste as the essential nature of all of samsara and nirvana. In the absolute space of that essential nature, all facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities are assembled as an aggregate, as it were, so it is called kaya. Likewise, since the ground of being is unchanging throughout the three times and does not transform into any other essential nature, it is called the immutable Vajra. Since the ground Shugatagava is unmoving and unchanging throughout the three times and does not turn into anything good or bad, it is immutable. Since it is indestructible and is imbued with the 7 Vajra qualities, it is called Vajra. Moreover, it is invulnerable to all mental afflictions, karma, and habitual propensities of mental afflictions. It can never be destroyed by objects or conditions. Since it is the great, primordial ground of all of samsara and nirvana, with its essential nature being eternally pure, it is real. Since it cannot be contaminated by any good or bad qualities, it is incorruptible. Since it is devoid of movement in space and change in time, it is stable. Since it is ultimate reality that can penetrate the absolute space that transcends the causal influences of even the subtlest cognitive obscurations, it is totally unobstructible. Since it cannot be changed by anything in samsara or nirvana, it is invincible to everything. So it is imbued with these 7 Vajra qualities. For example, relative, material Vajras are also said to have 4 Vajra pledges, but they could never be thrown as hand implements of gods such as Brahma and Indra. If they were thrown, they would never hit the target, and even if they did, they would never cut through it. While anything that can be severed cannot possibly be immortal, the ultimate, indestructible Vajra is indeed imbued with 4 pledges. What are they? 1. Realization of the ultimate nature of existence and all modes of being depends on whether fortunate beings have suitable prayers from the past conjoined with karmic momentum. Without them, it is impossible for any kind of sentient being to realize the meaning of this. 2. Once it has been realized and put into practice, it is impossible for you not to acquire indwelling confidence in samsara and nirvana as displays of the equality of the ground. 3. When you acquire the degree of warmth of the 4 kinds of confidence, it is impossible for you not to be liberated in the absolute space of equality of the 3 kayas. 4. As for the extent of your liberation, it is impossible for you not to become enlightened as the inwardly illuminated youthful Vaskaya. Thus, since it is imbued with these 4 Vajra pledges, it is called the immutable Vajrakaya. In reality, teachings about these 5 kayas as being naturally present as nothing but the ground are ultimate, while discussions of them as existing separately somewhere else as kayas, pure realms, and so on are relative, provisional meanings that constitute paths of skillful means. In accordance with beings' obsessions with families, here is the basis for speaking of the families of deities, since the ground of being is such that the defilements of habitual propensities are cleansed in absolute space, it is said to be cleansed. Since the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities are naturally fulfilled, it is said to be fulfilled. Since it is imbued with the 7 Vajra qualities, it is called the Vajra family. Since it is the origin of all kayas and facets of primordial consciousness, it is called the jewel family. Since it is not sullied by faults or defilements, it is called the lotus family. Since it thoroughly accomplishes enlightened activities, it is called the karma family. The term family refers to the respective associations embraced by each one. The following explanations are given. Due to people's obsessions with castes, a lord of 100,000 cities or more is said to be of a royal caste. A lord of 10,000 cities or more is said to be of a noble caste. Those who belong to worker families are said to be of a commoner caste. Those who engage in pure conduct, eat pure food, and have virtuous attitudes are said to be of a priestly caste. Those who live on flesh and blood and engage in negative conduct are said to be of an untouchable caste. Discussions of families regarding deities are presented to guide people by turning them away from their obsessions with those 5 castes. In the essential nature of the ground of being, since the defilements of habitual propensities of ignorance of the great absolute space of the one taste of the non-duality of all the jhanas of the 3 times are cleansed in absolute space, the ground is said to be cleansed. Since the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities are naturally fulfilled, it is said to be fulfilled. The various displays of emanations from its essential nature are called family. Likewise, since the ground of being is imbued with the 7 VAJRA qualities, which cannot be destroyed by anything, it is called VAJRA. The various displays of emanations from its indestructible, VAJRA-like nature are called the VAJRA family. As for the jewel family, just as a wish-fulfilling jewel is priceless due to its granting one's every desire, so all the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities of the path and fruition of the ground Shugatagava, the source of the unimaginable array of entrances to the path, are presented in accordance with the mentalities of individual disciples. This is why it is called the jewel family. Likewise, just as a lotus flower grows from the mud without being fouled by it, the ground Shugatagava is uncontaminated by the defilements of the 3 worlds, so it is called the lotus family. In the very nature of the ground Shugatagava, all actions are accomplished without anything being done and without effort, so it is called the karma family. Thus, teachings on the natural perfection of all the families without the being separate from the ground are ultimate, and teachings on the being fabricated as various families are relative and provisional. The word family refers to everyone who comes under the jurisdiction of one who is called a great king, and to everyone who belongs to a family bloodline. The following are teachings on the 5 Buddha fields, presented in accordance with people's obsessions with land. Ganavyuha, compact display, is so called because of the spontaneously actualized, compact density of sublime qualities in the absolute space of the ground. Irati, higher joy, is so called because it is imbued with great joy that is not created by any object, condition, or agent. Srimat, endowed with glory, is so called because it is imbued with a glorious bounty of facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities. Sukhavati, land of bliss, is so called because it is imbued with the taintless primordial consciousness of bliss and emptiness. Karmaprasiddhi, perfection of excellent deeds, is so called because it brings to perfection all actions of purification and liberation. The term field refers to absolute space, and the term realm indicates that it is none other than that absolute space. Likewise, in order to counteract people's obsessions with land and to guide them, these are teachings on the 5 Buddha fields of the deities. The Buddha field of Ganavyuha is so called because of the spontaneously actualized, compact density and the innumerable and limitless sublime qualities in the absolute space of the ground Shugatagava. The Buddha field of Irati is so called because in the lucid, luminous absolute space of the ground, free of contamination, it is imbued with great joy that is not created by any object, condition, or agent. The Buddha field of Srimat is so called because it is imbued with a glorious bounty of all facets of primordial consciousness, sublime qualities, and dharmas of the path and fruition, which are naturally present in the ground. The Buddha field of Sukhavati 113 is so called because ultimate reality, the absolute space of the ground, is of the nature of great bliss and is imbued with the taintless primordial consciousness of bliss and emptiness. The Buddha field of karma prasiddhi is so called because of the primordial consciousness of purification and liberation in the ground itself, and because it effortlessly and spontaneously brings to perfection all virtuous actions. The term field refers to pristine absolute space, and the term realm refers to all facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities that are none other than absolute space. In order to counteract people's obsessions with houses and to guide them, the following are teachings concerning the deities having palaces. Since the sublime qualities of the ground cannot be measured, it is called immeasurable, and since it fills all of samsara and nirvana, it is called a palace. Since the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities of the ground cannot be measured, and since it is beyond the scope of the intellect, it is said to be immeasurable. Since the ground fills and pervades all of samsara and nirvana, it is called a palace. In order to counteract people's obsessions with the male gender and to guide them, the deities are also said to have male gender. When the natural glow of the omnipresent absolute space of the ground is made manifest by all-pervasive great wisdom, all the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities of the domain of the ground Shugatagava are illuminated. Because the ground is imbued with the 7 indestructible Vajra qualities and is free of wavering and movement throughout the 3 times, it is an immutable Vajra. Because it is the source of all the dharmas of the path and fruition, and because it is imbued with a bounty of sublime qualities, it is called a source of jewels. The illumination of the ground is limitless, so it is boundless illumination. Since all authentic aims naturally emerge within it, it is said to accomplish aims. When the hidden, natural glow and all the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities of the omnipresent absolute space of the ground are made manifest by pervasive, all-seeing great wisdom, all the aspects of the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities of the domain of the ground Shugatagava are illuminated, so it is known as Vairocana. Because the ground itself is a great reality imbued with the 7 indestructible Vajra qualities and is free of wavering and immovable in the 3 times of the past, present, and future, it is called Aksavya. Likewise, ultimately, the absolute space of the ground, the great treasure expanse of precious, spontaneously actualized kayas and facets of primordial consciousness, is called Ratna, jewel. Because it is the source of all the dharmas of the kayas, primordial consciousness, and the path and fruition, and because it is imbued with a bounty of sublime qualities, it is called Ratnasambhava. The immeasurable and boundless light of the ground illuminates the displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness and is therefore called Amitabha. Likewise, since the meaning of all authentic dharmas is naturally present in the absolute space of the ground, it is imbued with meaning, and since it thoroughly accomplishes all enlightened activities, it is called Amahasiddhi. In order to counteract people's obsessions with the female gender and to guide them, the deities are also presented as Dakinas as follows. Since all phenomena of samsara and nirvana appear in the manner of coming and going in the true Vajra, the space of emptiness, this is called Vajradakini. The self-emergent aspect of all the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities, which are like a treasury of jewels, is Ratnadakini. The aspect of freedom from all attachments is Padmadakini. The self-emergence of actions of the spontaneously actualized kayas and facets of primordial consciousness, not performed with deeds or accomplished with effort, is Kamadakini. Since the afflictive and cognitive obscurations are cleansed in the absolute space of phenomena, and the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities are naturally brought to fulfillment, it is called Buddha, and since all phenomena of samsara and nirvana appear in the aspects of coming and going in the expanse of the space of great emptiness, it is called Dakini. Since the great absolute space of ultimate emptiness is imbued with the 7 indestructible Vajra qualities, it is called Vajra, and since all phenomena of samsara and nirvana appear as if they were expressions of going and coming in the space of the great uniform pervasiveness of ultimate reality, it is called Vajradakini. For example, just as all of one's many desires are naturally fulfilled by a treasury of jewels, so Ratnadakini is the self-emergent, effortless aspect of the spontaneously actualized kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities in the absolute space of the great uniform pervasiveness of the ground. Just as a lotus flower is unstained by mud, so the ground Shugatagava is untainted by the qualities of attachment and is free of all faults. This aspect is called Padma, and since it appears as many entrances of skillful means from the power of compassion in the space of ultimate reality, it is called Padmadakini. All sublime qualities of the ground, spontaneously actualized kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and so on primordially emerge of themselves in the ultimate reality of the ground of being itself, without needing to be performed with deeds or accomplished with effort. This aspect is Karmadakini. In the nature of the ground Shugatagava, the stains of afflictive and cognitive obscurations are cleansed in absolute space without its ever being defiled by them, so it is called cleansed, and the natural fulfillment of all the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities is called fulfilled. Since all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana appear in the aspects of going and coming in emptiness, the expanse of the space of Buddhadakini, it is called Buddhadakini. Therefore, references to the bodily aspects of faces, arms, body colors, and individual locations in the center and cardinal directions are relative, provisional meanings. Like fire and heat, water and moisture, air and coolness, and gold and its sheen, the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness are complete in the ground of being itself. Nevertheless, discussions of the Dharmakaya being present as the great soul Bindu, devoid of the symbols of faces and arms, constitute the ultimate, definitive meaning. Moreover, all the sublime qualities that appear in sets of 5 are merely nominally expressed in words, but their lack of real existence is ultimate. The appearance of space as the nature of space constitutes skillful means and relative truth, while the experience of space as inherently unreal is ultimate and is wisdom. Then, to summarize skillful means and wisdom. Thus, the manifestation of the ground Dharmakaya, the Shugatagava, the great reality that totally pervades samsara and nirvana, is the ground pristine awareness, which is the great freedom from extremes, and all ultimate sadhanas are synthesized as follows. Ultimate truth is the realization of pristine awareness, the Shugatagava, and apart from this, faces and arms are not established as having their own defining characteristics, the names have no reference, and the Dharmakaya is devoid of signs. The realization of its nature alone subsumes all the ultimate sadhanas, which are perfected here. Nevertheless, as skillful means to lead disciples who grasp at the permanence of the absolute space of ultimate reality, which is free of conceptual elaboration, by following relative, effortful paths in accordance with the ways of samsara, teachings are given that present the displays of the supporting mandalas and the beings who are supported by them as if the names and existence were real. First of all, going for refuge is as follows. Self-mastery, through your conviction that the ground pristine awareness is the synthesis of all the 3 jewels, is the ultimate, unsurpassed, real taking of refuge in the nature of existence. Ultimately, at the culmination of accurately knowing and realizing all the modes of existence and the nature of being of the primordial ground Shugatagava, you come to a firm conviction within yourself that your own pristine awareness has never been anything other than a display of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness. This pristine awareness of gaining mastery over the ground of being is the essential nature that synthesizes all the jewels. How so? The empty essential nature of pristine awareness is the Dharmakaya, its luminous nature is the Sambhogakaya, and its all-pervasive compassion is the Nirmanakaya. Therefore, it is the synthesis of all the 3 kayas. It has never been defiled by any karma, mental afflictions, or habitual propensities, so it is awakened. All the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities are naturally present in it, so it is full. Hence it is Buddha. The natural radiance of pristine awareness as the kayas and spontaneously actualized displays is the Dharma, and the aspiration for the indivisibility of the spontaneously actualized displays and the Shugatagava is the Sangha. So all the three jewels are synthesized. The Guru is so called due to being the basis for establishing samsara and nirvana and being the culmination of all phenomena to be realized. Your conviction that the ground of being is none other than the nature of the Guru is your personal deity. The presence of all of samsara and nirvana in the space of ultimate reality, without going or coming, is the Dakini. So this is the synthesis of the three roots. As it is written, the mind that is devoid of achieving purity is Buddha. Immutable stainlessness is Dharma. And the spontaneous perfection of sublime qualities is the Sangha. So the ultimate nature of your own mind is supreme. Vidyadhara Jigme Lingpa wrote, this unmodified, self-emergent pristine awareness is unrecognized as the essential nature of all the objects of refuge. Never letting such pristine awareness be separated, even for an instant, from the nature of primordial consciousness is said to be the unsurpassed, real going for refuge in the nature of existence. It is free of anyone who goes for refuge and from all that provides refuge. In place of that, in accordance with the ways of samsara, once you have taken refuge with a king, wherever you stay in his kingdom, no one is allowed to harm you. Likewise, once you have gone for refuge in the three jewels, obstructive beings and interferences will not arise. Thus, at the outset visualize in the space in front of you the glorious youthful Vajra surrounded by Jinnas and Jinnaputras. Light emanates from his three places, inviting deities like himself from absolute space, who then dissolve into him. Imagine yourself being surrounded by all sentient beings, principally your own parents, malevolent spirits, obstructive beings, and so forth. Assemblies of deities face all these sentient beings, including yourself, they witness you with their eyes and hold you in mind with great affection, and you ask them to remain. Visualizing them in front of you, you and all sentient beings bow to them reverently with your bodies, reverently chant the words of going for refuge with your voices, and with your minds reverently go for refuge with a sense of utter trust in the total awareness of all you do. This is merely relative. Regarding the generation of Bodhisattva. Throughout the course of beginningless lifetimes, you have grasped a true existence and have fixated on objects, causing you to become very small-minded. Now, having come to a decisive understanding of samsara and nirvana as continuous displays of the one pristine awareness, the scope of your mind is expanded. This is the most sublime of all methods for generating bodhisattva. Ultimately, over the course of beginningless lifetimes, that which is called your mind has focused on yourself alone. Due to grasping at the I, you have deceived yourself by reifying the distinction between yourself and others and fixating on objects, deluding yourself about them. As a result of such reification, you have become very small-minded, and under the influence of minor circumstances you have clung to all manner of joys, miseries, and indifferent feelings. This continuous stream of desires and cravings is called the mind. When you realize ungenerated, precious bodhisattva of the nature of being, which is the Dharmakaya, pristine awareness that is present in the ground, you will realize all of samsara and nirvana as continuous displays of the one pristine awareness, and you will experience absolute space that is devoid of activity and free of conceptual elaboration. Having come to a decisive recognition of all that appears as displays of the Dharmakaya, the scope of your mind is expanded, such that all of samsara and nirvana arises as great displays of bodhisattva. This is the fruition of all methods for generating bodhisattva, and it is the most sublime of all dharmas. At the outset, determining with discerning wisdom the nature of being of all of samsara and nirvana is aspirational bodhisattva, and in the end, the realization of samsara and nirvana as displays of perfection is called engaged bodhisattva. In the place of that, the pledge to serve the needs of sentient beings by aspiring to free all beings of the three realms from the ocean of suffering of conditioned existence with compassion, loving-kindness, empathetic joy, equanimity, and so forth is aspirational bodhisattva. Focusing on the welfare of all sentient beings and then applying yourself to the six perfections and to steadfastly practicing the profound methods of meditating on deities and reciting mantras is called the cultivation of engaged bodhisattva. Regarding expelling obstructive beings, the dualistic mind that grasps at the apprehender and the apprehended is the great demon of conditioned existence that causes you to wander among the three realms of samsara. With discerning wisdom, expel this into emptiness devoid of objects. The malevolent, obstructive spirit that obscures your own face of ultimate reality, or suckness, is the great demon of grasping at the I throughout the three realms of samsara. All the positive thoughts that derive from this are the divine spirits of the positive side of conditioned existence, and all the negative thoughts are the vicious, demonic spirits of the negative side of existence. Subtle configurations of discursive thoughts move about like obstructive beings who are masters and mistresses of adversity. Determine with discerning wisdom that great, middling, and minor demonic spirits have no real existence apart from such thoughts, and then expel them into emptiness devoid of objects. This is ultimate. In place of that, imagine emanating tormas as ransom to the assemblies of obstructive spirits who interfere with your achieving enlightenment. With the samadhi of displaying apparitions of ultimate reality, visualize these tormas as an inconceivable bounty of pleasures of the victorious gods of Tusita, and imagine the obstructive spirits being satisfied with your offering and returning to their own abodes. As for all those spirits who still do not obey your command, imagine yourself in the form of the great glorious one, Heruka, emanating many ferocious weapons and flames from your body and expelling the spirits into the darkness of a realm on the far side of the great ocean. Imagining that their own appearances shift and that they are all in their own abodes is merely relative. Regarding the protective tent, the experience of the wisdom that realizes identitylessness is the wheel of protection of bodhisattva, which cannot be vanquished or destroyed. Ultimately, as a result of experiencing the wisdom that realizes identitylessness and of recognizing all of samsara and nirvana as the play of bodhisattva, you decisively understand that all who inflict harm and all who are harmed have never been established as real. This is the wheel of protection of bodhisattva, which cannot be vanquished or destroyed, and it is the ultimate, primordial protective tent. All inflictors of harm are released right where they are, and are banished into non-objectivity. In place of that, withdraw all the ferocious weapons and flames that had been emanated outward and transform them into a wheel of protection, including vajras, wheels, jewels, lotuses, swastikas, volcanoes, and so forth. Visualize yourself and others to be protected as deities inside the wheel, and imagine that no demonic or obstructive beings can harm you. This is merely relative. Regarding the descent of blessings, the descent of the great blessing of primordial consciousness, pristine awareness, into the darkness of ignorance constitutes the actual descent of blessings. Once you have determined the nature of all impure, delusive appearances and mindsets and have experienced the nature of existence and mode of being of the ground, the darkness of ignorance is dispelled regarding the ground of being, and you gain mastery over great primordial consciousness, pristine awareness. This constitutes the actual descent of blessings. In place of that, with heartfelt faith and reverence imagine rays of light emitted from your heart, arousing the mind streams of the jinnas and jinnaputras and drawing forth the physical kayas from the absolute space of phenomena. All empowerments, blessings, and siddhis appear as subtle symbols of the bodies manifesting as five-colored mounds of light, like a mass of clouds and rainbows. The speech appears as various seed syllables, and their minds take on the aspects of various hand implements. They all dissolve into the practice substances and life necessities of your own abode, which you visualize as the actual, self-appearing, greater canasta. Imagine your dwelling as a palace composed of the 5 facets of primordial consciousness, your practice substances as the ambrosia of primordial consciousness, and the body, speech, and mind of the practitioners as being blessed as the nature of the 3 Vajras. This is merely relative. Regarding the blessing of the offering substances, with the realization of how appearances arise as ornaments of pristine awareness, the arrays of naturally occurring sensory experiences become offerings. The ultimate is the self-emergent manifestation of the spontaneously actualized Dharmakaya, absolute space, free of the extremes of conceptual elaboration, arising as displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness. With the authentic realization of how all phenomena arise as ornaments of pristine awareness, great primordial consciousness, you recognize the appearances of all self-emergent sensory experiences as uncreated, primordially presented offerings. In place of that, with the great primordial consciousness of the 3 kayas, seal the self-emergent appearances of sensory experiences arising as sensory objects of deluded sentient beings. Then, in all the mandalas of self-appearing primordial consciousness, emanate great clouds and oceans of offerings of the 7 outer offerings, the 5 inner offerings of sensory objects, the secret offerings of medicine, traumas, and blood, and the very secret offerings of union and liberation, as well as the offering of suckness. Imagining the emanation of inexhaustible sensory objects as an unimpeded flow of displays of ornamental wheels of the nature of the elements is relative. First, the main practice of generating deities is as follows. The transformation of the substrate into the Dharmakaya is the enlightenment of the primordial ground of being. The actualization of the wisdom that knows the nature of existence, of that ground, just as it is, along with the all-knowing and all-illuminating wisdom that perceives the full range of phenomena, is the synthesis of the mysteries of all the jhinas and jhinaputras. The assembly of haughty guardians of the teachings represents the path of skillful means for your initial realization, the array of bodhisattvas represents the path of skillful means for the mastery of the 8th bodhisattva ground and higher, and the array of Buddhas and Buddhafields represents the path of skillful means for manifest Buddhahood. Explanations of the ignorance of the substrate as Mahasvara and of all the configurations of thoughts that arise from it as the 8 classes of guardians of the teachings, Dharmapalas, gods, and demons are expressions of skillful means. The appearances of creative expressions of great primordial consciousness emerging of themselves from the manifestation of the Dharmakaya, the primordial ground of being, are classified and presented as paths of skillful means, and the manifestation of ultimate Buddhahood is the sadhana. All sadhanas and mandalas are synthesized and perfected in this. Having transformed the substrate into the Dharmakaya, the authentic actualization of the Buddha Samantabhadra, who is of the nature of the 4 kayas and the 5 facets of primordial consciousness, is the wisdom that knows reality as it is. The unimpeded knowledge of all illuminating, unimpeded consciousness that is all-knowing and all-cognizing is the great wisdom that perceives the full range of phenomena. The experience of the great primordial consciousness that knows reality as it is and perceives the full range of phenomena is the synthesis of the mysteries of all the jhinas and jhinaputras, and this is the real, profound sadhana. Not realizing that, sentient beings reify the delusive appearances of thoughts as autonomously existent objects that arise in the aspects of apparitions of the 3 kinds of vicious greyas, demons, and rakshasas. They also become deluded by grasping at other assemblies of haughty guardians of the teachings as being autonomously existent. Individuals who have slightly identified and realized pristine awareness know and realize that the apparitions of the 3 kinds of vicious greyas and their attendants are merely creative expressions of their own 3 poisons and have no autonomous existence of their own. They know that the guardians of the teachings and Dharmapalas are nothing other than creative expressions of pristine awareness, and due to seeing how the basis of accomplishment is completely present in themselves, they do not go astray by regarding it as autonomously existent. Simply by reaching the 8th bodhisattva ground, you achieve extraordinary, sublime qualities through the transformation of your faculties. Impure appearances cease by themselves, all appearing objects are perceived as Buddha fields, and all appearing forms are perceived to be of the nature of male and female bodhisattvas. From the time that you gain mastery of the 3 pure bodhisattva grounds, there is the distinction that the 8 groups of conceptualizations arising from the substrate appear as sublime qualities that are transmuted into primordial consciousness. At the end of the continuum of the 10th bodhisattva ground, the obscurations of habitual propensities are overcome by the antidote of the Vajra like samadhi, and you become enlightened in the 11th ground of omnipresent light. Then, on the 12th ground of the lotus of detachment, the 13th ground of the holder of the Vajra, and so on, the experiences of the sublime qualities of enlightenment are said to be the state of Buddhahood. Moreover, teachings that the arrays of pure lands and Buddha fields appear to be adorned with the signs and symbols of a Buddha's body, and teachings that the teacher and his circle of disciples exist as different from each other represent the path of skillful means. To explain this in a little more detail, the assemblies of Nagis, Grayas, and Kesamapatis emerge from the creative power of delusion. The assemblies of male Grayas and Parthivas emerge from the creative power of hatred. The assemblies of female Grayas and female demonesses emerge from the creative power of attachment. The ancient, primal demons, including the 18 great principal Grayas, the 15 great minor Grayas, the mother Harini and her 500 sons, and so on, emerge from the creative power of the 84,000 mental afflictions in the forms of adventitiously assembled minor demons. Likewise, regarding the Dharmapalas, teachings about the appearances of displays of principal deities and their retinues, including Mahasvara as the nature of ignorance of the substrate, the emptiness and luminosity of the substrate consciousness as the assembly of the female lineages, the 8 collections of consciousness as the 8 classes of guardians of the teachings, afflictive mentation as the planets, and mentation as yaxes, are just expressions of skillful means, for they all lack autonomous existence. Thus, by practicing such that the basis of accomplishment is present within yourself, accomplishments also arise due to this vital point. Here is how there is no contradiction in the bodhisattvas being merely nominally imputed, while having no autonomous, objective existence. Regarding the name Manjugosa, since the ground Shugatagava is free of all the roughness of mental afflictions, it is called gentle, since it is imbued with the glory of the spontaneously actualized kayas and facets of primordial consciousness, it is called glorious, and since enlightened speech is imbued with 60 qualities, it is called melody. Likewise, regarding Avalokitesvara, because of the manifestation of omniscient primordial consciousness, it is called I, because great, all-seeing primordial consciousness is devoid of partiality, and because it luminously perceives all phenomena without attachment, obstruction, or confusion, it is called seeing. Likewise, because one has achieved great power, holding the power of liberating all impure appearances and mindsets into pure states, is called Mahasthamaprapta. Such expressions are ultimate, and references to them as existing otherwise are relative expressions of skillful means. In short, classifications of appearances as creative expressions of the great, self-emergent primordial consciousness of the Buddhas, who actualize the great Dharmakaya of the primordial ground, are merely artificial expressions of the path of skillful means. Ultimately, by recognizing the nature of existence and mode of being of the ground, you finally come to a conviction within yourself, and you do not digress from this manifest state. This is the actual, profound sadhana, and all sadhanas and mandalas are synthesized and perfected in it. Now, instead of those, for the main practice, before meditating on the supporting Buddha field and palace and on the deities who reside there, the impure karmic aeon must be dissolved into absolute space and brought forth as pure appearances of primordial consciousness deities. For example, dream appearances and waking appearances do not both appear simultaneously, nor can the human realm and hell realm possibly manifest at the same time. Likewise, the impure appearances of samsara and the Buddha fields of primordial consciousness deities cannot possibly exist simultaneously. So first, imagine that the phenomenal physical worlds, the animate sentient beings who inhabit them, and the appearances of the five sensory objects all dissolve into absolute space as illusory apparitions dissolving into the nature of emptiness. The manifestation of this mode of existence of suckness, ultimate reality, is called the samadhi of suckness. Those who do not know the nature and mode of being of emptiness merely impose some kind of emptiness upon that which is not empty, and they do not directly experience the samadhi of suckness. The actual samadhi of suckness is experienced only by yogins who have realized the view of emptiness. Once again, with the manifestation of the mode of being of the ground, great, all-pervasive primordial consciousness, all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana manifest as displays of great spontaneous actualization, like planets and stars in the ocean. This manifestation of everything is called the all-illuminating samadhi. This is in the realm of experience only of those yogins who have identified the Dharmakaya, pristine awareness that is present in the ground, and of no one else. Others' cultivation of compassion with sentient beings as the object or with no object by means of the intellect and mentation entails an object and cogitation, and the all-illuminating samadhi does not manifest. So recognize that one is merely a substitute for the other. Regarding the causal samadhi, in an instant, like rainbows suddenly appearing in the sky where none existed previously, and like planets and stars suddenly appearing in a pool of water where none existed before, from the absolute space of all-pervasive ultimate reality, free of conceptual elaboration, visualize your awareness as the causal syllable Om, white and blazing with light and rays of light. This is the cause for the emanation of the nature of all foundational mandalas, and those who reside in them. Thus, the authentic revelation of the samadhi of suckness and the all-illuminating samadhi transcends the intellect, mentation, and conceptual objects, and it is the primordial consciousness of emptiness and of pristine awareness. Causal samadhi consists of apparitions involving objects, the five elements, and luminosity, of the seed syllables. From the visualized causal, dark blue syllable hum, the syllables a, yav, bav, lav, and rav are emitted, symbolizing the five purified elements. A totally transforms into lucid, clear space, from which anything can appear. Yav transforms into air in the form of a black mountain with the shape of a crossed Vajra in the realm of baseless emptiness. Bhav transforms into a serene, clear, pure ocean in the form of a spherical, swirling water mandala. Lav transforms into a powerful, golden, rectangular ground. Rav transforms into the nature of fire, of the nature of all, in a warm, crescent-shaped form. As a symbol of victory over the three realms, Kemage transforms into a three-tiered mountain of bones as vast as absolute space. On it is a variegated lower foundation upon which a causal syllable in the center of a Vajra emanates a syllable Brahm. It totally transforms into a palace imagined outwardly as peaceful and inwardly as wrathful, in order to block impurities and thoughts. The exterior of the spontaneously actualized palace of great bliss consists of a five-layered wall symbolizing the five facets of primordial consciousness. The exterior is rectangular, symbolizing the four kayas. Its four sides, symbolizing four facets of primordial consciousness, blaze white to the east, yellow to the south, red to the west, and green to the north. The sidelights to the left and right, radiant like the stars during the interval between the sun and moon, symbolize the skillful means of great bliss and the wisdom of emptiness. The four doors in the shapes of the four enlightened activities symbolize the four immeasurables. The steps composed of various precious substances and the paintings and sculptures at the corners in four beautiful colors symbolize the unimpeded luminosity of primordial consciousness. The ledge at the base of the walls symbolizes the principle that attractive appearances to the senses are not to be rejected but rather arise as ornaments. The beautiful, lovely borders, pendants, cornices, balustrades, and so on symbolize the transformation of the appearances of the ground into the spontaneous actualization of pristine awareness. The lapis lazuli roof symbolizes the primordial consciousness of the absolute space of phenomena, and the vases and awnings are symbols of immutable bliss and emptiness. The Dharma wheels and parasols symbolize the unified perfection of all the stages of the grounds and paths. The beautiful top ornaments of the sun, moon, and jewels symbolize the completion of the three arti yanas. The 8 portals above the 4 entrances, shaped like a horse's hoof, a lotus, a chest, cross-hatched lines, a garland of flowers, tassels and garlands, a cornice, and the edge of a roof, are symbols of phenomena arising as displays in the expanse of ultimate reality. Above them, the roof is adorned with deer listening to the Dharma, lotuses, Dharma wheels, parasols, and so on, and to symbolize the purification of the assemblies of thoughts. Beneath the 4 stupas on each of the 4 corners, streams of blood trickle from the mouths of 4 water dragons. Between them, mouths adorned with human heads are adorned with bone lattices and pendants. The fire and wind at the end of the eon blazes fiercely, symbolizing the destruction of the 6 realms of samsara in absolute space. In order to overcome the impure, delusive cycle of existence, spiritual messengers, weapons, and so on terrifyingly swirl about like a blizzard. The entire display of charnel grounds is symbolic of the purification of the objects of the senses. Imagine that this is all gradually surrounded by a protection wheel established as a self-appearance of primordial consciousness. In the center of all of this is a wrathful palace, which is triangular inside and dark blue in color, manifested to subdue the assemblies of vicious beings who lead others astray. Its foundation is composed of dried human heads symbolizing the 3 kayas, its walls are composed of moist heads, and the eaves are composed of old heads. The meteorite nails driven into it symbolize bodhisattva, and devas, nagas, planets, directional protectors, and constellations are represented by pillars and rafters. Visualize in the center of the entire display of the wrathful palace the spokes of a wheel symbolizing the purification of the 8 sensory objects. 8 lions symbolize the purification of the 8 types of consciousness. The jeweled throne represents the transcendence of mundane existence, the lotus represents detachment towards samsara, the moon represents a lack of contamination by faults, and the sun represents freedom from all faults. The maras of the aggregates and the mental afflictions lie face down on the right, symbolizing the slaying of self-concepts in absolute space and the pervasive realization of identitylessness. The maras of the devas and the Lord of Death lie face up on the left. The causal awareness syllable hum descends and is seated upon them, and from it rays of light are emanated upward, making offerings pleasing to all the jinnas and jinnaputras of the 3 times. Arousing the mind streams of the personal deities, all the ornamental wheels of their enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities converge in the form of light rays and dissolve into the hum. Rays of light are then emitted downward, utterly purifying all the vices, obscurations, habitual propensities, karma, mental afflictions, and suffering of all sentient beings. Then, as if forcefully arousing them from sleep, they are all liberated in absolute space with no vestige of delusion. The light rays retract back into the hum, and, simultaneously all the vitality, merit, brilliance, and majesty of the 5 elements of all sentient beings dissolves into the hum in the form of 5 colored rays of light. The syllable hum then transforms into you as the glorious youthful Vajra, the Dharmakaya, indigo in color, symbolizing freedom from conceptual elaboration. Your 3 heads symbolize the 3 kayas, your central eye symbolizes the primordial consciousness of the essential nature of emptiness, your right eye symbolizes the primordial consciousness of the nature of luminosity, and your left eye symbolizes the primordial consciousness of all-pervasive compassion. Your 2 ears represent the union of the 2 truths, your 2 nostrils represent the fulfillment of the 2 concerns, your own and others. The symmetry of your face represents great bliss, your tongue is a symbol of the equal liberation of samsara and nirvana, Your orange hair streaming upward represents primordial freedom from delusion. Your sun and moon earrings symbolize skillful means and wisdom. Your 6 arms symbolize the 6 facets of primordial consciousness. The 9-pointed Vajra symbolizes the 9 grounds. The 5-pointed Vajra symbolizes the 5 kayas and the 5 facets of primordial consciousness. The 3-pointed Khatvanga symbolizes the release of the 3 poisons into absolute space. The mass of fire symbolizes the incineration of karma, mental afflictions, and habitual propensities. The Mount Meru Kila represents the release of the 4 maras into absolute space, and your 4 legs represent the 4 bases of miraculous power. The complete array of accoutrements and wrathful clothing of the charnel ground symbolizes the objects of the senses arising as ornaments. You dwell within a mass of fire, symbolizing the incineration of mistaken, ignorant thoughts. A wheel of consorts synthesized in the form of the consort Gaiditma symbolizes the non-duality of appearances and emptiness. Vajrakila is of the nature of mirror-like primordial consciousness, Ratnakila is of the nature of the primordial consciousness of equality, Padmakila is of the nature of discerning primordial consciousness, and Karmakila is of the nature of the primordial consciousness of accomplishment. The purification of configurations of thoughts is symbolized by the 10 wrathful beings, together with the consorts and all their retinues and gatekeepers. All these appear but are devoid of inherent nature, like rainbows, and being luminous but without conceptual grasping, they are generated like reflections in a mirror. Visualize the face and form that you have imagined in your self-generation as appearing instantaneously in front of you, like a reflection appearing in a mirror. At the 3 places in yourself and in the being visualized in front of you, visualize the 3 seed syllables, from which light emanates, arousing the mind streams of the jinnas and inviting the empowering deities in the form of the 5 Buddha families. They bestow the empowerments for the 5 facets of primordial consciousness, purifying the contaminations of afflictive and cognitive obscurations and transforming your 5 aggregates into themselves, the 5 Buddha families. You are enthroned as a regent of the jinnas, and you are invigorated in the great, universal splendor of samsara and nirvana. Imagine that the remaining water solidifies on the crown of your head, transforming into an ornamental half Vajra as a sign of your empowerment, and that you dwell as the principal deity of the family, with your head adorned by the 5 families. Again visualize at your 3 places, upon a wheel, lotus, and sun, disk, a white syllable om, red r, an indigo hum, from which lights are emanated. All the jinnas appear in the form of the 3 seed syllables and dissolve into you, sealing the deities of your body, speech, and mind. Imagine that you actualize the 3 innate, indestructible Vajras. The invitation is as follows. The invitation consists of manifesting the essential nature by transforming all phenomena of the 3 realms of samsara into displays of the one great ultimate reality. Ultimately, when the nature of existence of the ground pristine awareness, the great freedom from extremes, manifests, everything that appears as phenomena of the 3 realms of samsara is purified in the nature of the 3 Vajras of the body, speech, and mind of the jinnas. They are of one taste in the absolute space of the great uniform pervasiveness of ultimate reality, and the invitation consists of manifesting naturally present great primordial consciousness by transforming samsara and nirvana into displays of the ground of being. In place of that, by emanating white, red, and indigo rays of light from your 3 places, from the absolute space of the treasury of ultimate reality, invite all the jinnas and jinnaputras of the 10 directions and the 4 times as displays of the supporting mandala and supported deities, like a swirling blizzard. Imagine that they come to you and to the practice substances, dissolving into you and the deities in front of you as well as into the practice substances. This is merely relative. The request to remain is as follows. Holding your own ground within yourself, without movement or change within the 3 times, is the request to remain. Ultimately, identifying pristine awareness that is present in the ground of being, free of movement and change within the three times, and holding your own ground within yourself and stabilizing this within your midstream is the request to remain. In place of that, in accordance with the ways of samsara, you offer thrones that are pleasing to the jinnas and request them to remain. As you do so, you imagine placing them on the thrones, and this is merely relative. The homage is as follows. When you encounter your own face as the Dharmakaya, the primordial ground of being, the sovereign view, your experience of great wonder is the homage of engaging with the view. Ultimately, when you determine pristine awareness as the absolute space of the three kayas by way of the view and encounter your own face as the Dharmakaya, the primordial ground of being, uniform pervasiveness free of elaboration, you experience great wonder at the perfection of the spontaneous actualization of all the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness. This is simply an expression of the sounds of homage of engaging with the view. In place of that, in accordance with the ways of samsara, as if you were paying homage and bowing to lords of men, such as kings, you visualize yourself as a deity and imagine emanating from your body as many ordinary sentient beings as there are particles of dust on the earth. By recalling the sublime qualities of the assemblies of deities of the mandala, you pay homage, and this is merely relative. The offering is as follows. The display of phenomena as ultimate reality is the great offering. Ultimately, when you truly perceive the mode of existence of pristine awareness that is present in the ground, all desirable things that are grasped as phenomena having their own characteristics arise as ornamental displays of ultimate reality, the Shugatagava, and this is the great offering. In place of that, in accordance with the ways of samsara, recognize all possible desirable phenomena as unprepared, self-emergent offerings, and offer them up. Regard prepared substances as if they were illusory substances, regard enriching mantras as if they were mantras of illusory substances, and regard mentally emanated offerings as if they were illusory objects. Emanate bountiful offerings as apparitions presented to the senses of deities who appear as if they were the audience, and offer all of these. Offer the 7 outer offerings and the inner offerings of visual form, sound, smell, taste, tactile sensations, and so forth. For the secret offerings, transform the 3 realms into the ambrosia of enlightened body, speech, and mind, and offer it. Imagine samsara as rakta displayed as blood, and the world of appearances as a toma that synthesizes the vital essence. By unifying appearances and emptiness, all phenomena encompassed by dualistic grasping melt into white and red bodhisattva, and offering this to the deities constitutes the offering of union with the objects of ultimate reality and the VAJRA of skillful means of the swift realization of ultimate reality, transform the 3 realms into flesh, blood, and bone, which liberates the Rudra of the reified view of the self into selflessness, and offer that. Then, releasing all appearing phenomena into great ultimate reality that transcends the intellect is the offering of liberation, and this is merely relative. The praise is as follows. The wonder and confidence upon truly perceiving the mode of existence of the great perfection of samsara and nirvana is the actual praise. Ultimately, when the pristine awareness that is present in the ground, Dharmakaya, is actualized, you recognize and realize all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana as displays of the one great emptiness. This is the true perception of all the modes of existence and nature of being of the great perfection. So the wonder and enduring delight at this, and the certainty of it due to perceiving the meaning of the primordial perfection of the fruitional kayas and all the sublime qualities of primordial consciousness as the ultimate reality of the ground, constitute the real praise. In place of that, imagine emanating from yourself countless vairas and dakinas who praise the body, speech, and mind of the assembly of deities with an unimaginable variety of musical instruments and pleasing songs. This is merely relative. The individual, distinct appearances of various phenomena are arrays of the enlightened body. The spontaneous perfection and actualization is the display of the enlightened speech. Primordially pure absolute space, free of the extremes of conceptual elaboration, is the display of the enlightened mind. In short, the individual, distinct illuminations of various appearances are pure by way of the 8 gateways of spontaneous actualization, and they are non-dual from the enlightened body, speech, and mind. 1. By appearing as kayas, the displays of Buddha fields and palaces are self-appearing. 2. By arising as lights, the 5 individual, distinct lights clearly manifest. 3. By appearing as compassion, the primordial consciousness of wisdom and heartfelt compassion are unimpeded. 4. By appearing as non-dual, pristine awareness arises like that, so it is undifferentiated and non-dual. 5. By appearing as being free of extremes, pristine awareness does not fall to the extremes of existence or non-existence. 6. By appearing as primordial consciousness, the stages of the ground, path, and fruition are also known to not be separate but to be of one taste with the ultimate nature. 7. By appearing as impure expressions of samsara, all the appearances of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants appear to exist even though they do not, and thus they arise like apparitions. 8. By appearing as pure expressions of nirvana, the self-appearing pure experiences of great primordial consciousness are perfected as the wheel of limitless ultimate reality. Thus, the individual, distinct appearances of various phenomena are arrays of the enlightened body. They are not newly produced by fresh causes and conditions but are spontaneously actualized as displays of the 5 energies of pure primordial consciousness, and the primordial perfection as the radiance and mantras of these energies is the wheel of the enlightened speech. Although appearances arise as the enlightened body and sounds arise as displays of mantras, they do not move beyond primordially pure absolute space itself, free of the extremes of conceptual elaboration. So they are displays of the enlightened mind. As the omniscient Guru, Longchenpa, states. Thus, all that appears as form arises as ornaments of absolute space, the wheel of the enlightened body. All sound and speech without exception arises as ornaments of absolute space, the wheel of the enlightened speech. And the inconceivable array of discursive thoughts, movements, and dispersions of the mind arises as ornaments of absolute space, the wheel of the enlightened mind. The 6 kinds of sentient beings, with their 4 modes of birth, do not move beyond the absolute space of phenomena, even the slightest bit. The qualities of realizing how the displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness are spontaneously actualized without being sought after, include mastery over the 4 kinds of enlightened activity, and these are characteristics of the pristine awareness of the great perfection. Truly recognizing and realizing the nature of the kayas and the facets of primordial consciousness has the quality of perfecting the spontaneous actualization of your own and others' well-being, just as seeing the characteristics of a wish-fulfilling jewel naturally fulfills all your desires. Temporally speaking, you gain mastery over the 4 kinds of enlightened activity, and the effortless occurrence of all activities and siddhis constitutes such enlightened activity. These are characteristics of the pristine awareness of the great perfection. Know that the 4 empowerments are likewise simultaneously perfected in the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities within yourself. If you know and realize this, the 4 empowerments are also primordially perfected in the ground of being, without receiving initiation. By determining the nature of samsara and nirvana as great emptiness, the appearances of the enlightened body are perfected, and by realizing the emptiness of the nature of great, unobstructed pristine awareness as the great bliss that dwells within, appearances and emptiness manifest as primordial consciousness, so the vast empowerment of the enlightened body is perfected. Moreover, all the appearances of the spontaneous displays of the 5 pure lights as all the appearances of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants are none other than the essence of the energies of primordial consciousness. From the luminous aspect of these energies emerge all apprehended and non-apprehended sounds. From the empty aspect of their essential nature, the inconceivable secrets of the enlightened speech are primordially purified as the natural sound of the ineffable nada, and this brings forth the meaning of the indivisibility of luminosity and emptiness, thereby perfecting the secret empowerment of enlightened speech. All movements subsumed by the mind are in reality none other than the essential nature of non-conceptual awareness and emptiness, and they arise solely as emergent appearances of the primordial consciousness of great bliss. By simply resting in meditative equipoise in the nature of ultimate reality, the non-duality of bliss and emptiness, free of conceptual elaboration, the great primordial consciousness that dwells within is actualized. So this perfects the wisdom primordial consciousness empowerment. Thus, when mastery is gained over the ground of being, great ultimate reality, and the spontaneously actualized wheels of appearances of the path, then you experience the nature of existence of awareness and emptiness, which is primordial consciousness, inexpressible by speech or thought. So this perfects the originally pure word empowerment. For these reasons, the aggregates are liberated as a body of light. With the entrance of the power of speech, mastery is gained over the nature of existence of phenomena. With the transference of the mind to the Dharmakaya, the continuum of delusive appearances is terminated, and once you have awakened within yourself, you achieve actual Buddhahood as the luminous youthful Vajrakaya. Now, in order to guide others, there are many ways of revealing empowerments, but by realizing the meaning for yourself, you gain the experience of yogins who have liberated themselves. Apart from that, talking about guiding others without having liberated yourself is as futile as trying to squeeze butter out of sand. This is like an unanointed king commanding that someone else's kingdom should be given to beggars, nothing whatsoever comes from it. Therefore, yogins who have decisive understanding, that all the peaceful and wrathful mandalas are none other than creative expressions of their own pristine awareness, visualize the disciples as deities and bless them. While the guru chants the liturgy of empowerment, the disciples also imagine that from the heart of the guru and the deity visualized in front of them, a second deity separates off and dissolves into the sacred places. In this way, they imagine that the glories and sublime qualities of each of the deities are perfected, and if they harbor no doubts about this, they receive the empowerment. This is like a king endowed with the status of his station and with sovereignty over his kingdom granting property and wealth to others, they actually receive it. Thus, truly knowing and realizing the nature of perfection is certainly the great perfection. As a result of failing to know this, you have wandered in samsara in the past. Although perfection is primordial, it has been obscured by ignorance. This is like water that is naturally liquid freezing into a solid, and like having no relief from poverty due to failing to recognize gold and jewels. Ultimately, the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities of the ground Shugetagava are perfected as creative displays of this ground. Explanations of them as individual supporting mandalas and supported deities are presented as skillful means to guide disciples who grasp at things as permanent in ultimate, effortless absolute space, and they depend on relative paths entailing effort. Therefore, using the three essential points of luminosity, purity, and emptiness, those disciples are led to the fruition of supreme absolute space. With these words, he disappeared. Thus, truly recognizing how all phenomena, including the kayas, facets of primordial consciousness, path, and fruition, are primordially perfect in the ground of being and realizing their mode of existence and nature of being are certainly the view and tenet system of the great perfection. As a result of failing to correctly perceive and realize the definitive mode of existence and nature of being and so forth, you have wandered in samsara in the past, and you will still not transcend samsara. Why? Because absolute space, in which the purity and equality of the three kayas is primordially perfect in the ground of being, has been obscured by ignorance. Failing to perceive your own face as the ground of being is like water that is naturally liquid freezing into a solid due to a cold wind, and it is like gold and jewels in the home of a beggar who, because he doesn't recognize them, has no relief from poverty. Likewise, by failing to recognize the nature of being and mode of existence of the ground, you can do nothing more than merely accumulate merit within samsara, reaching the three higher states of existence by mere physical and verbal virtues, and descending to the three miserable states of existence as a result of non-virtues. Ultimately, all the facets of primordial consciousness and sublime qualities of the ground Shugetagava are perfected as creative displays of this ground. Explanations of them as individual mandalas of supporting palaces and supported deities are presented as skillful means for guiding disciples who grasp at things as permanent in ultimate, effortless absolute space, and, such people, depend on relative paths entailing effort. Therefore, using the pith instructions, life force, vows, and nails of the three essential points of luminosity, purity, and emptiness, disciples are led to the fruition of supreme absolute space. In this regard, there are the nail of luminous deities, the nail of samadhi, the nail of the view of ultimate reality, and the nail of enlightened activities of emanation and reabsorption. Within this category, first, the nail of luminous deities is to counteract ordinary fixations by vividly imagining as mental objects all the bodily colors, hand implements, ornaments, and garments of your personal deity. If you do so with pure recollection, this prevents the stage of generation from degenerating into reification. Second, the nail of samadhi is to stabilize the pride of regarding yourself as the deity. Until now, the latent consciousness that grasps at appearances of sentient beings' bodies as I while roaming about within samsara has been self-grasping. This is the creator of all appearances and mindsets. To remedy it, visualize your body as the deity and stabilize the pride of the unimpeded sense of being the deity. When a clear appearance emerges, finally 8 measures of clarity and stability fully expand, and you definitely gain the power of directly seeing and touching this appearance. As Vajradhara proclaims, with the passing of 6 months of unwavering admiration and reverence, the state of Vajradhara will be achieved. You must practice without contamination by human speech, without letting the warmth of your meditation cushion dissipate, and without letting your mind wander elsewhere. As a Tantra states regarding the nail of samadhi, single-pointedly sustain your attention, without wavering, on the kaya above. Practicing without laziness is the nail of samadhi. Third, regarding the nail of the view, from the Dharmakaya Samantabhadra above down to the insects in the grass below, you must decisively understand that they are none other than displays of the one Shugetagava. Those who fail to realize this may actualize the primordial consciousness beings, but due to reifying them, such people remain as mere worldly beings, with no possibility of truly realizing the primordial consciousness beings, just as there is no medicine in poison. This is due to failing to realize emptiness. If you truly realize emptiness, you may become like a yogin in the past who effortlessly achieved the 4 kinds of siddhis of enlightened activity by actualizing a thurang. If you don't realize emptiness, even if you actualize Samantabhadra, he will be established as a worldly being. By actualizing a peaceful deity, you will be reborn as a god of the form realm. And by actualizing a wrathful deity, you will become a Mara, a Rudra, and so on. A Tantra explains this. If you lack the nail of immutable enlightened view, even if you actualize the great glorious one, you will remain ordinary. And without achieving the supreme siddhi, you will degenerate into a Rudra. Therefore, even though everything in the world of appearances of samsara and nirvana consists of displays of your own appearances, a single cognition that reifies their existence causes all physical worlds, the sentient inhabitants, and all sensory objects to appear as if they were truly existent. Due to dualistic grasping, you become deluded by regarding as existent that which does not exist, like Geshe Dradau and the Tirthika Drakompa. In the past, a son of the gods asked Mañjuśrī whence arose the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, including Mount Meru, the sun, and the moon, and he replied that they arose from the thoughts of a single sentient being. The son of the gods then asked how they could arise just from thoughts, and he responded by telling the account of an old Varanasi woman long ago who visualized her body as a tiger during the early part of her life. During the latter part, her body actually appeared as a tiger, and she killed many people in the city. Since beginningless time, if you reify things, of course such things will happen, he concluded. This illustrates the necessity of knowing the manner in which all phenomena are empty. Therefore, once you have decisively recognized the physical world and its sentient inhabitants as your own appearances, you should unwaveringly rest in that awareness. As Lapran states, if there is no activity in the mind, there are no obstructive beings or pitfalls. Intellectuals retort that resting in your own nature without doing anything is the view of Hashang, but no one knows how to characterize him, for the Buddha's teachings in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma are able to explain to the intellect phenomena without characteristics. When the extraordinarily brilliant Master Kamalasila symbolically asked, by whirling his staff around his head, what is the root of the three realms of samsara? Hashang responded by slapping together his two sleeves, indicating that it is dualistic grasping. Both the symbolic question and the symbolic answer illustrated their sharpness of understanding. As it is said, this is comprehended only by the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and no one else can decide it. No one can know the level of Hashang's mindstream. In general, if you maintain that the physical world and its sentient inhabitants exist autonomously, they would not be emptiness, and even if you maintain that they are empty, if you assert nothing more than their mere emptiness from their own side, there are many kinds of emptiness, such as a hole left by removing a stake from the ground. This is merely naming that which is not empty as being empty, and it is not authentic. If you assert that there is one basis for samsara and nirvana, you would have to agree that when one sentient being achieves enlightenment, all sentient beings would achieve enlightenment simultaneously. If you say that although there is only one basis, they don't all achieve enlightenment at once, then even if one part of the basis achieved enlightenment, since that being would finally be merged in the basis of sentient beings, he would become deluded all over again. What is the use of asserting that sentient beings exist autonomously? By recognizing that sentient beings have no autonomous existence, what harm is there? This is a pointless dispute. Since beginningless time, due to reifying existence, the six kinds of sentient beings appear and are deluded, so recognizing that all phenomena have always been empty and identityless is a crucial point. Nowadays, since many people fail to realize this, even though they all debate about it, if they don't gain decisive understanding of their own view and meditation from within, they are in danger of going astray. So once you truly know the nature of being of the view, you don't need to cut through others' misconceptions. This is very important. As the perfect Buddha declared, monks, just as the wise accept gold after testing it by melting, red, cutting, white, and rubbing it, yellow, so are my words to be accepted after examining them. But not just out of respect for me. Thus, not mistaking the cause of samsara is the defining characteristic of the view, and realization is the nail of immutable wisdom. Fourth, the nail of enlightened activities of emanation and reabsorption consists of four kinds of recitations and visualizations. First, the display of recitations, like the moon and a garland of stars, is as follows: visualize yourself as your personal deity, luminous yet empty, as a body of light like an inflated balloon. On a lotus and sun seat at the level of your heart is the Jnanasattva Aksavya, 1 inch in height, dark blue, and holding a Vajra and bell crossed at his heart. Imbued with great peace, he sits in the Vajrasana in a hallowed expanse of the light of the five facets of primordial consciousness. At his heart is a sun seat, no larger than a flattened pea, on the center of which stands upright a 9-pointed meteorite Vajra, the size of a seed. Within its center are a wisdom sun mandala and a skillful means moon mandala, both of them white on top and red on the bottom. They are in the shape of an amulet box the size of a grain of mustard, within which is the dark blue samadhisattva syllable hum, as fine as if it were drawn with a single hair. It faces forward, and there is a visaga behind it. Imagine this as the essential nature of the life force of all of samsara and nirvana, concentrated in Aksavya's heart. Inside the bindu visualize the guru, on the crescent, the personal deity, on the top line of the syllable, the dakini, and inside the ha syllable, all the dharmapalas. Inside the U vowel sign visualize the life force mantras of the 8 classes of gods and spirits, facing downward. On the right side of the ha syllable visualize the male guardians, and on the left side, the female guardians. In front of it visualize disciples, and behind it the circle of attendants with the favorite enjoyments. The general guardians are hidden within the ranks of the gods, but they are not to be hidden in the heart of the life force. Men should visualize the hum syllable being circled by the mantra garland in a counterclockwise direction and the retinue in a clockwise direction, while women should visualize the hum syllable being circled by the mantra garland in a clockwise direction and the retinue in a counterclockwise direction. Immeasurable rays of white light are emanated from the nada and bindu of the hum, making offerings pleasing to the body, speech, and mind of all the jinnas and jinnaputras of the 10 directions. All the compassionate blessings, glory, power, and siddhis dissolve into your heart in the form of a mass of white light. Imagine that all impure appearances and mindsets are forcefully purified, and that your body, speech, and mind are enlightened in the nature of the 3 Vajras. With your attention single-pointedly focused on the kaya, mantra garland, mind, life force, syllable hum, and so on, the entwining of samadhi and the mantra recitation constitutes the worship of the deity. The mantra garland then rises up above the seat and circles clockwise at the midsection of the hum like a firebrand, emanating rays of light and goddesses bearing offerings, which are offered to the jinnas and jinnaputras, pleasing and satisfying their minds. In this way the 2 accumulations are perfected. All the blessings of compassion emerge in the form of light rays and dissolve into you, completely purifying the stains and habitual propensities of mental afflictions and obscurations. Then imagine that the body, speech, and mind of the deity become non-dual with your own. This constitutes the close worship of the deity. Once again the mantras stand on the seat, enunciating their respective sounds and circling in a clockwise direction. A second mantra garland separates from the first, like a second candle being lit from the first, and it enters through the U vowel sign of the hum, emerges from the nada, and then moves from your mouth to that of the consort. Imagine that the form of the kaya is transmitted from the lotus of the consort into the opening of your own vajra and then dissolves into the U vowel sign of the hum. From the life force at your heart, red light rays are emitted, making offerings to all the jinnas. Imagine that all the blessings of compassion, splendor, power, and siddhis in the form of a mass of red light dissolve into the practice substances actualized in front of you, and that you achieve all the supreme and common siddhis. This is the visualization for gathering blessings for your own sake. Between yourself and the deity visualized in front of you, a circling mantra garland emerges from your mouth and enters the mouth of the principal deity generated in front of you. The form of the kaya is transmitted from the deity's vajra into the consort's lotus, and then moves from the consort's mouth into the mouth of your own consort. Immersing yourself single-pointedly in this continuous cycle like before constitutes the accomplishment. From the mantra garland, 5 colored rays of light are emitted, making offerings pleasing to the body, speech, and mind of the jinnas. Imagine that all the blessings of compassion, splendor, power, and siddhis are invited in the form of 5 colored lights and dissolve into yourself and the deity visualized in front of you, and that you achieve all siddhis. As light rays are emanated downward, all the karma, mental afflictions, vices, obscurations, and habitual propensities of all sentient beings of the 3 realms are completely purified, like sunlight striking hoarfrost. All appearances transform into a Buddha field and celestial palace, and all beings transform into the nature of gods and goddesses. Imagine that they all loudly recite the sounds of the mantras with one voice and one mind, like bees when their hive is being destroyed, such that all realms of the world of appearances move, shake, and tremble. This is the great accomplishment. Although there are many kinds of activities, in general there are visualizations for 4 activities. In the morning, visualize that immeasurable rays of light are emitted from your heart and that of the deity in front of you, spreading out to the 10 directions and making offerings pleasing to the jinnas and jinnaputras. Strongly arousing the mind stream of your personal deity, all the power, blessings, siddhis, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities of the inexhaustible ornamental wheels of his enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities are drawn inward in the form of a mass of white light, and they dissolve into yourself and the deity in front of you. Then imagine that you have received all the power and might of peaceful activity. Again a mass of white light is emitted, striking all the sentient beings of the 6 classes and 3 realms, completely purifying all their vices, obscurations, habitual propensities, karma, mental afflictions, and suffering, and imagine that they all transform into kayas of Jnanasattvas. The visualization for enriching activity is as follows. At noon, visualize immeasurable rays of yellow light being emitted from your heart and that of the deity in front of you, causing all the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the jinnas and jinnaputras, the vital force and merit of all the devas, ayasis, and vidyadharas, the quintessence and vital essence of the 5 elements, and all the life force, merit, splendor, and wealth of all sentient beings of the 3 realms to manifest in the form of a mass of yellow light, which dissolves into yourself and the deity in front of you. Thus imagine that your life force, merit, wealth, facets of primordial consciousness, and sublime qualities all increase. The visualization for powerful activity is as follows. In the evening, imagine immeasurable rays of light, red like the color of rubies, being emitted and drawing in all the jinnas and jinnaputras of the 10 directions in the form of a mass of red light. As they dissolve into you, imagine that all the power, blessings, and siddhis are perfected. Once again, immeasurable rays of red light in the form of hooks are emitted, drawing into your power sentient beings of the 3 realms, including all the gods, spirits, and humans of the world of appearances. As soon as they arrive in front of you, imagine that their hearts gush forth from their mouths and dissolve into the soles of your feet, so that they are helplessly captured as your servants. Onto the crowns of the heads of all those who harbor harmful, rough attitudes, a red mass of light descends from your heart, transforming into a meteorite Vajra. For those who abide by the samayas, this serves as a support for the samayas, but for those who allow the samayas to degenerate, it transforms into an iron scorpion that destroys their heart's blood. Once you have conquered all the strength and glory, imagine that they enter your service and abide by the samayas. The visualization for wrathful activity is as follows. At night, visualize yourself as the deity, and from your body emanate a flurry of weapons, articles for sorcery, hail, and thunderbolts, like a violent dust storm, pulverizing all enemies, obstructive beings, and malevolent beings, like water extinguishing sparks or hail striking mushrooms. Emanate countless small, wrathful beings, iron scorpions, and garudas, who completely devour mounds of the enemy's blood, flesh, and bones. Imagine that they are incinerated in a blazing ball of fire and that their remains are scattered by a gale of razors, so that not even a trace remains. Imagine repeatedly that the consciousnesses are liberated in the absolute space of phenomena, where there is no delusion. By visualizing your body as a deity, you receive the vast empowerment of the body. By verbally reciting mantras, you receive the secret empowerment of speech. By not allowing your mind to be separated from the radiance of primordial consciousness, you receive the wisdom primordial consciousness empowerment of the mind. By realizing the non-duality of the deity and your own appearances, you receive the precious word empowerment. Thus the 4 empowerments are perfected simultaneously. In general, you must keep secret the place, time, companions, substances, mantras, and ritual articles for your practice. If secrecy is not kept, siddhis won't occur, and there is the danger that obstacles will arise, so it is said that extreme secrecy is of the utmost importance. Finally, when you are about to settle into your session, emanate from all your vital places countless offering goddesses, who make offerings and utter praise as before. Afterward, the sequence of activities for the Ganakakra offering can be learned in the Vajra essence. Then, regarding receiving siddhis, powers, and blessings, the siddhis of the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of all the deities generated in front of you arise in the form of Om, Ah, Hum, and 5 colored rays of light, and they dissolve into your 3 places. Imagine that you achieve the supreme siddhi, the 4 grounds of Vidyadharas, the 8 mundane siddhis, and so forth. Regarding the dedication, imagine unifying all the virtues and collections of virtues you accumulate in the 3 times, and just as all the jinnas of the 3 times have dedicated and will dedicate their virtues, likewise dedicate them so that all sentient beings, whether near or far, without bias or discrimination in terms of time, may achieve the state of perfect, omniscient enlightenment. Regarding prayer, pray that all sentient beings may achieve the omniscient state of enlightenment. Regarding reabsorption and re-emergence as the deity, by reversing the order in which the primordial consciousness deities previously emerged from the causal syllable, now reabsorb them back into the nature of ultimate reality. All the displays of Buddha fields reabsorb into the celestial palace, the palace reabsorbs into the assembly of deities, the assembly of deities reabsorbs into the principal deity and consort, the consort reabsorbs into the principal deity reabsorbs into the Jnanasattva reabsorbs into the mantra circle reabsorbs into the form of the Samadhisattva syllable hum. The U-vowel sign reabsorbs into the small a reabsorbs into the main body of the ha. The main body of the ha reabsorbs into its top line, the top line reabsorbs into the crescent reabsorbs into the bindu reabsorbs into the nada, and the nada reabsorbs into the absolute space of phenomena. Then, by releasing yourself into uniform pervasiveness in the nature of ultimate reality, free of conceptual elaboration, and remaining in meditative equipoise for as long as you can, the extreme of permanence is dispelled. By again uttering the root mantra from the nature of this luminosity, you suddenly appear as the body of your personal deity, like a fish surfacing from water. By generating the physical world and its sentient inhabitants as the circle of deities, the extreme of nihilism is dispelled, and you enter into stream-like conduct. As for auspiciousness, generate from the absolute space of phenomena all the jinnas and jinnaputras of the 10 directions as rupakars, who then perform auspicious dances in the sky and verbally chant auspicious verses and melodies of Brahma, and mentally imagine them granting the glories of compassionate benefits and joys to sentient beings. From their hands falls a great rain of various auspicious flowers, which overcomes all unwelcome adversities, while increasing all virtues, goodness, and sublime qualities, like a waxing moon. Imagine that they enjoy the glories of the first eon of perfection and chant auspicious verses. If you do not truly fathom the purity of the visualization of the nail of the deities, the generation practice will degenerate into reification. Therefore, all the distinct appearances of the bodies and ornaments, the principal deities and their retinues, and the sublime qualities of the great, naturally present primordial consciousness of the ground of being manifest as extraordinary skillful means in the luminous external forms of the deities' bodies. You must correctly fathom this view and conduct. The visualization of deities constitutes the aspect of appearances, and the aspect of emptiness is their absence of inherent existence, never wavering from the nature of great ultimate reality and free of elaboration, like a reflection of the moon in water. This must be visualized without grasping, like a rainbow in the sky. With these crucial points, by perfecting the assembly of thoughts as the circle of deities, the 10 bodhisattva grounds will be gradually reached, and the 3 fruitional grounds will be simultaneously perfected, such that you become enlightened on the unsurpassed 13th ground of Vajradhara. With these words, he disappeared. The purpose of teaching the stage of generation as an entrance of relative skillful means is as follows.